A man you know well, Mr. Trevor Sinclair, Rio Ferdinand has been speaking, I think in his own podcast. He's none too happy about Phil Jones at Manchester United. Rio's virtually saying that Jones is blocking a Manchester United academy player from a first-team opportunity and has virtually urged him to leave the club to give somebody else a chance because, of course, Phil Jones never really features anymore for Manchester United because of long-term injury. It begs the question, why was Jones offered a new deal back in 2019? One wonders. This was Ferdinand on this Jones situation.
He's taking up a youth team player's position in that squad right now.
Wow.
He's had too many injuries, man. I was in the same team as Phil Jones, same squad. He come from Blackburn as a young kid. Everyone's saying he's going to be like this great player. Huge potential, but injuries have absolutely annihilated his career, and then confidence issues at certain times as well. So he's never been able to really fully establish himself in that team, whether it's injuries, lack of form, lack of confidence. I think he should have gone ages ago. He should have gone ages ago. He should have gone before Chris Smalling went to go to a new club and just find some form and go and play some football, man. He's lacked consistency throughout his career at Man United. That's a fact, as I said, for all the reasons I stated before. And I am baffled how he's still given a new deal at the football club, given his past few years at the club. It just doesn't make sense to me how you'd get a new deal, because I remember back in the day, you'd have to do some absolute graft to get a new deal. You'd have to be putting in performances. You'd have to be a vital member of the team, squad. Phil Jones isn't that.
Wow. Do you know something, Trevor? That's the first time I've heard that. And I've met Rio on a number of occasions. I'm surprised at that. For a start, it's not Phil Jones' fault that his career has been plagued by injury.
No.
And it's also not Phil Jones' fault that United offered him a new deal at the football club, which obviously he's going to accept.
Of course he's going to accept it. He's probably still got aspirations of getting in the first team. I look at Phil Jones, I see a player that's been crippled by injuries over the years, all different kinds of injuries as well. I don't see a bad egg. I look at him, I think he looks like a good pro. He's not going to cause loads of problems. He's got a family, he's got kids. He needs to try and maximise the amount of finance that he earns in his career. Why would he turn down a contract off Manchester United? I think the only people that need to be criticised are the people that offered him the contract, because it's not worked out again. But for Rio to come out like that and criticise him and say he should leave the club and he's holding down an academy player's opportunity to go into the first team.
Yeah, that's for Jones to think about.
I'm not happy with Rio about that. I think he stepped over the line there for me.
This is the same Phil Jones, Simon. Sir Alex Ferguson once described him as potentially Manchester United's best ever player before he of course embarked, sadly, regrettably, in a catalogue of injuries.
Yeah.
But Jones doesn't ask to be in this position.
I think we have to look at. I think we have to excuse some of the Rio's words. And look at the underlying meaning. It's bad business. It's bad business. You wonder why they would have offered a contract to Phil Jones, because even back in 2019, he wasn't prima facie going to be their centre half of choice, was he? So you wonder why a selection of managers, executive vice chairman, and whoever else are in the mix are prepared to offer him a contract. It must be a reason. There must be a logical reason behind it, because no one's getting a backhander from it, are they? Because there's no reason for that being the case. So you look at it and say, it's a strange commercial decision. I think Rio is trying to make a point. I'm not an admirer of Rio Ferdinand. I think he very rarely has an opinion of his own. He runs with the hare and hunts with the hounds, and then sits there whilst being an ambassador for the guys that want to buy West Ham by advocating their best player goes to Man United. So I think some of the time he doesn't open his mouth about putting his foot in it. In this instance, I think what he's trying to do is show that this is bad business on behalf of Man United, and he's conflating that into some sort of moral obligation upon Phil Jones to have an attitude about youth. I'm sure when Rio rocked up to Queen's Park Rangers and wasn't fit for purpose over there, he didn't worry about a youth team player in QPR not being able to get in the side because he was there. So I don't think he's got the right to say that to Phil Jones, but I think the overriding observation about, is this good business from Manchester United's point of view?
Of course it's not.
And he's right to say that.
But
so
you've got to
focus on that. He's right to say that.
But I'm totally with you on Simon. Yeah. To me, though, the way it comes over and the way Rio has articulated himself, it sounds like he's kicking a man when he's down.
Yeah, I think you've got to have more empathy. When you've had, and listen, I've had 5 knee surgeries, and when you're injured, it's a lonely place, and you feel like you can't contribute, and you actually have that kind of doubt. Why am I earning this money and I can't even contribute? I see the lads coming in with cuts and stitches and broken legs, and I cannot contribute. So we'll be feeling down anyway. I think as a player, as a fellow player, you have to have empathy for that, because he doesn't mean to be injured. And the fact they've given him a contract, I think that shows the club have seen him in the gym working tirelessly to try and get himself back so he can contribute, and they've given him a contract on that basis. So in a way, I think it's a little bit naughty from Rio.
When you do in a situation
It's going
like
from one
that,
extreme
Simon,
to the other, isn't
if
it?
you're at the top of the club, you're like, Phil, look, this isn't really working out, is it?
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to be blind Pew not to look at this and go, well, Phil Jones doesn't form part of the long-term plans, either from an ability point of view and or from a reliability point of view for fitness and injuries that in part will not be anything to do with him. So you look at that and say, it's a bad business decision. You know, Rio Ferdinand, you've gone from one extreme to the other. You've gone from players not being prepared to say a word about one another to players piling in now and taking it to a different level. And I think if you step back from it and say, well, what did you mean, Rio? Because, you know, you've gone in with two-footed on a certain way, and he probably really meant it's bad business on Man United.
But that's obvious.
But you can't conflate the moral obligation. It's a silly argument. It's a clickbait argument, and people say that's ironic being on talkSPORT. It's a clickbait argument that suggests that a player is keeping a youth team player out of the Man United. Which youth team player are we talking about then?
Yeah,
Rio?
exactly.
Right? Because they're too busy buying. They've just bought another centre half. They're buying centre half. There's no youth team player that's getting into that squad ahead of Phil Jones.
And it's also you look at it, and if he doesn't get the contract, he ends up in the position of a player that we've just spoken about recently on the shows at talkSPORT, and that's Jack Wilshere. He's 29 years old. Because he's had so many injury problems, he can't get a club. He's 29 years old.
Yeah.
And he's not been injured for, a couple of 18 months. They're
victims of their own industry. It happens.
Who knows it's not a massively reduced wages?
Is that right, Trevor? Because I would take Jack Wilshere if I was a football club owner on a pay-and-play deal.
Yeah, I would too.
So then he can get a club, but he just can't get it under the auspice of the terms that he wants.
Well, we don't know that.
Well, we do, don't we? Because you said you can't get a club. And the reason why he can't get a club is because no one wants to take the risk of giving him a long-term contract, right? That would make sense, wouldn't it? So if you take Jack on a pay-and-play deal, then there's no risk to anyone. Jack gets paid the money he wants when he plays. And if he's not fit and he doesn't play, then he doesn't get paid.
So he wants guaranteed payments.
That seems absolutely
logical.
Otherwise,
I don't know for sure.
But
Trevor, that's such a good point. That seems absolute logic there.
Yeah,
he's made his money, having done what he's done in the earlier part of his career.
If he wants to play football, he should be able to get a club because, like Simon just said, he can go in there, pay as you play, and then if he doesn't play, he's never going to get paid.
Yeah.
So it's one of them. You have to back yourself, go in there, play 40 games, get even more than you would have done on a single contract. Happy days.
So going back to your point, is he can't get a club because he has expectations of what he should be able to get. But we don't know that. But you're the one that said he couldn't get a club because he's injured.
Well, I'm only repeating what he said.
Okay, so then we do know that then. So he can't get a club because he has expectations of being able to get into a club. Because anybody would take Jack Wilshere if it cost them nothing, would it? If it cost you nothing to have Jack Wilshere, a former international footballer that prima facie should be able to do a job, he walks through the door, costs you nothing. Who's going to say, no, I'm not having that? Everyone's going to say, yeah, I love it. But I'm only paying him if he plays.
I'll pay you when you play.
Yeah.
So he can't get a club. I think it's reasonable to assume because he has expectations of getting something that his injury record probably prohibits clubs having the confidence to want to give him.
On this one, Trevor, on Rio, I think if the shoe was in the other foot, Rio wouldn't like to be talked about in the way that he's talking about Phil Jones.
And that's his ex-teammate. 100%. And that is his ex-teammate. They were there together at Manchester United. He said that in the interview. So I don't understand why you would go...
Do you think he's playing to a gallery?
Do you
think he's playing to the Manchester United fans going, look at me, I've got the club's best interests at heart. What's happening over here? Woodward's a clown, this person's a clown.
But still, I wouldn't expect Rio to do that to a fellow teammate.
The only thing I would say...
As I say, it's the first time I heard it. I was surprised at it.
The only thing I would say is this claptrap that we have where people protect one another against the truth and they don't say the truth because they once were dressing room colleagues.
There's no truth about that.
Well, no, I'm not saying that's the case, right? But I'm saying that in this instance, we can't on one hand say, I'm surprised that Rio said this about another player. We can't ask for people to have integrity in the media and speak openly and then say, whoa, dressing rooms, privacy.
No, it's a fair point.
So we've got to get a balance.
I know what you're saying.
But he's gone too far.
Jim White and Simon Jordan, Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.